could have been accomplished by me but for the first sufferings and then the story of my Tana enterprise. So there is a Romans 8:28 kind of microcosm that he lived on for the rest of his life. Those 4 years that looked so completely pointless in the happening. And some of you are at the 4th year of that. You cannot write the rest of your story. You have to trust God that He will do something with that apparently fruitless investment. I was filled with a high passion of gratitude, he wrote after he visited Scotland, to be able to proclaim at the close of my tour at home, that of all her ordained ministers, speaking of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, now 1 in every 6 was a missionary of the cross. So one of the effects, one of the achievements of the fruitless experience on Tana was to go home and tell the stories of the dangers, tell the stories of his wife, tell the stories of his child, tell the stories of his sickness. And when he headed back 4 years later to Aniwa, 1 in 6 of you was a foreign missionary. That's worth a lot of suffering. At least he believed it was. Now, what about the effect on the church just at home? Not to leave it, but here's what he wrote. Nor did the dear old church thus cripple herself because of these men who were leaving. On the contrary, her zeal for missions accompanied, if not caused, unwanted, W-O-N-T, unwanted prosperity at home. New waves of liberality passed over the heart of the people of God. Debts that had burdened many of the churches and manses were swept away. Additional congregations were organized, and in May 1876, the Reformed Presbyterian Church entered into an honorable and independent union with her larger, wealthier, more progressive sister, the Free Church of Scotland. So he thrilled to look at the health of the church at home because he was there recruiting for the New Hebrides. And brothers, I would tell you, never, ever, ever has the Lord let the cause of world missions in a local church hurt that church. It doesn't happen. And so go for broke when it comes to the unreached peoples of the world. I don't care how bad it is in your church. Lift up your sights towards the unreached peoples of the world. Third effect, to vindicate the power of the gospel to convert the hardest people. One of the interesting things about Paton's autobiography is that he has an eye on the culture despisers of religion back home in Scotland and in Europe. He's writing this book for lots of different kinds of people. One of the kinds of people he's writing for is professors in universities who scoff at the reality of the supernatural and the reality of conversion. Oh, he's got good quotes on this. For example, there was a chief named Kauia on Tana. This is one of the triumphs of Tana. There weren't many, but Kauia was one of them. And he was dying. And these natives had an uncanny way to know when they were dying. And he came to him and he said, I am dying. And he didn't know how he knew, but he just said, I am dying. Farewell, Missy. I am very near death now. We will meet again in Jesus and with Jesus. Abraham sustained him, tottering to the place of graves. There he lay down and slept in Jesus. And there the faithful Abraham buried him beside his wife and children. Thus died a man who had been a cannibal chief, but by the grace of God and the love of Jesus changed, transfigured into a character of light and beauty. What think ye of this, ye skeptics, as to the reality of conversion? In another place, he talks about Abraham himself. This Abraham is another sweet piece of the story. They don't get any better than Abraham, his servant. When I have read or heard of the shallow objections of irreligious scribblers and talkers, hinting that there was no reality in conversions and that mission effort was but waste, oh, how my heart has yearned to plant them just 1 week on Tanna with the natural man, all around in the person of cannibal and heathen, and only the one spiritual man in the person of the converted Abraham, nursing them. He means him. Nursing them, feeding them, saving them for the love of Jesus, that I might just learn how many hours it took to convince them that Christ in man was a reality after all. All the skepticism of Europe would hide its head in foolish shame, and all its doubts would dissolve under one glance of the new light that Jesus and Jesus alone pours from the converted cannibal's eye. There's something about evangelism, brothers, and especially on the raw, cutting edge where it feels impossible that a person could really stop being a Muslim and start being a Christian, or stop being a Hindu and start being a Christian, or stop being a cannibal and start being a Christian, or stop being an agnostic and start being a glorious transformed Christian. There's something that happens there that sweeps away all the skepticism of Europe from your heart. Whereas if you're just trying to fight that battle with books and not doing the frontline stuff of testing it, it doesn't have the same force of deliverance from skepticism. And so this book functions as a kind of vindication of the reality of the supernatural and the reality of conversion. That's another effect of courage on Tanna. Third main point. Where did this courage come from? What was its origin? Number one, his courage came from his father. Now, I know he wants us to say first it came from God, and I do say that first. But under God there were these means, and his father, I tell you, after the first 80 pages of this, if you had taken it from me and ripped it to shreds and said, see, you've wasted your $25, I would have said, I didn't waste a nickel. 5 pages in this book are worth $25 to me. I have 4 sons and 1 daughter, and I wept over these pages, and I wept last night as I read them again, because I want to be a daddy like this daddy was. To produce a John Paton, he did not come out of nowhere. He came from a daddy and a mommy. And most of us, not all, but lots of us are fathers in this room, and some are younger and still have a lot of fathering to do. Others are older, and we still have a lot of fathering to do. At least I do. I got a 4-year-old, and I get another chance now with Talitha. Now, why do I say this was so remarkable that he came from his father? There was a closet in this little Torthorowald village, and in that little closet his father went 3 times a day after every meal and prayed, and they heard him praying. There were 11 children in the family, and they knew how to keep it sacred and quiet. This is what he wrote. Though everything else in religion were by some unthinkable catastrophe to be swept out of memory, were blotted from my understanding, my soul would wander back to those early scenes and shut itself up once again in that sanctuary closet, and hearing still the echoes of those cries to God, would hurl back all doubt with the victorious appeal, he walked with God. Why may not I? How much my father's prayers at this time impressed me, I can never explain, nor could any stranger understand. When on his knees and all of us kneeling around Him in family worship, He poured out His